Wait till you hear what I ask you to do after the end of the forum. It's a surprise.
Pick up chairs.
It
Pick up
is.
chairs, right?
It is.
That's what I... Okay.
Don't spoil the surprise. The league literally begs for places to do forums because we're nonprofit and we have no money. So we should pass the hat. What do you think? No, so we look for places that are free or relatively inexpensive. So Sugar Grove Township Community Building, with the assistance of Sherry Baum from the Chamber, was instrumental, along with my friend Linda Gasca here at the question review table, in getting us this location. So, I mean, it really makes a difference. We scout all over the valley, and for this I started in October, except you guys were kind of the add-on at the last minute. I thought 6 was a good number, but Linda convinced me that 7 was the good number. So here we go. Sugar Grove trustee positions, and we will start with opening, and I have seated people by the first 4, starting with Ms. Johnson, are on the ballot. The last 2 here are write-in candidates, and we have included them because the league believes in transparency, and we believe in democracy, and we believe that everybody has the right to vote for whom they feel they should vote for. So, with no further ado, we'll start with Ms. Johnson for an opening. 2 minutes.
Hi, good evening. My name is Marie Johnson. Oh, I'm sorry, microphone. They forgot to pass me the
Use the
microphone.
microphone.
Good evening. My name is Marie Johnson, and I want to thank the League of Women Voters and for hosting the forum and all of you for attending. My husband Kevin and I moved to Sugar Grove in August of 1987 and became community volunteers in September of 1987 when we joined the Sugar Grove Community Club. It was through this volunteerism that I received a call from the Elburn Herald asking me to fill the role of community
Could you
reporter.
put the mic a little closer?
Okay. It was through this volunteerism that I received a call from the Elburn Herald asking me to fill the role of community reporter. I served in this capacity for 5 years, covering village board and committee meetings as well as other events in Sugar Grove. This community involvement led me to being asked to run for trustee for the first time in 1995. I will admit to being reluctant, as my younger son was only 6 months old. However, I accepted the challenge because of the love I have for my community, and I have served as trustee for the past 24 years. Over that time, I have attended numerous board meetings, committee meetings, seminars, and conferences to ensure that I was gaining proper knowledge and information to complete my duties. I have worked hard in conjunction with my fellow board members to grow our community in a sustainable manner. Over these years, we've added over 15 subdivisions, growing our population from around 2,500 to nearly 10,000. Those subdivisions offer a variety of housing options and price points. We have added our commercial corridor along Route 47, and we have added to our industrial base. All of this to diversify our tax base. Our community continues to be fiscally responsible with an excellent credit rating. We strive to provide our residents with high-quality services. When possible, we work to partner with other taxing bodies to enhance our community through intergovernmental agreements. I would like to see many of the long-range plans that we have worked on come to fruition. I ask for your vote on April 2nd. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Klein Wideen. Am I saying your name correctly?
Perfect.
He's afraid of me.
So my name is Alex Klein-Wadeen, and I just want to take a second to thank the League of Women Voters and really everyone that's here today. It's amazing to see a community when it steps up, and that's really the reason we're all here, is because we love the village of Sugar Grove. There is no reason to be here, and I'm really thankful for all of the candidates that have stepped up, because the only reason everyone is sitting here and why I appreciate all of them is they're here to love and take care of the village of Sugar Grove. Personally, I've lived in Sugar Grove for 6 years, and I've worked in Sugar Grove for 19 years. So I'm getting there, not quite a lifer yet, but I'm working on it. Ultimately, this election isn't about a single issue. What we've seen the last few months is there's so much emotion and so many residents that care deeply about our future. And the next 5 years to 10 years are going to be imperative to the village of Sugar Grove, what it looks like for my children, children's children, and the next 3, 4, 5 generations will be decided. Sugar Grove will be developed over the next few years, and I think that the village board plays an imperative part on what that is going to look like. Ultimately, from what I've seen, and in the position of both working and living here, is that I feel that change is needed. Change is always good, and one of the words that stuck with me from Miss Medlin Wilson is passion. And I think passion is extremely important, and you need people that are willing to put the time in and put the effort in to really get things done. And I'm going to take a little bit of a different stance from everyone else, and I feel that the best 2 candidates, and what my vote would be for Jennifer Conan and Ryan Walter. Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Lundy.
Thank you.
I'm Heidi Lundy, and I wanted to
Right closer. Sorry.
thank you for the League of Women Voters for having us. It was awesome, and thank you for everybody who comes out, because the more people that come out, the more everyone hears what we want, what the village wants, and the more we can do that. This is my second year, going on my second year as a village trustee. I was appointed, so I've been here for a little over a year on the board. Prior to that, I served as a village plan commissioner for 4 years. When I moved to Sugar Grove in 2003, I fell in love with its balance between rural, small town, and Chicago suburb. I became a trustee because I wanted to help preserve that feel. My work as a licensed architect for over 20 years, my background in city and regional planning, my experience as a small business owner, and my record as a volunteer in the community give me the skills and knowledge to help Sugar Grove grow in a responsible way that will maintain our small town feel. I believe the more involved our residents are, the better our community will be. So I am dedicated to hearing what the residents have to say before making decisions. As a trustee, my approach of listen first, research, and then discuss allows me to create the most effective outcomes. I want to be your voice on the village board.
Thank you. Mr. Pollock.
Thank you. Thanks again for the League of Women Voters for coordinating this forum, and thank you for everybody for coming out today. It's great to see the passion that you have for the village of Sugar Grove. My wife Deb and I moved out to Sugar Grove in '96. I first thought about running in 2008 for a trustee, so I attended every board meeting so I can get a better understanding of what was going on in the village and how village government operates. 2009, I lost that election by 24 votes. But that didn't stop me. So I still attended every board meeting for 2 years. Because of my involvement with the community, the board appointed me to the Police Commissioners Board as well as the Planning Commission. So I had a very good understanding of various aspects of the village government and how it worked. And I thought it was important that a village trustee should know what goes on in a board meeting. That's why I attended every meeting for 3 years. Since 2011, we're coming off one of the worst economic recessions in American history, but we've seen a lot of great growth coming into our town. We've seen numerous new businesses come into town, which is including but not limited to McDonald's, Ace, Culver's, and Walgreens. We have resolved the flooding issues in Hannaford Farms and resolved the issues that were in Settlers Ridge and the flooding issues in Mallard Point, and we resolved the issues in Hannaford Farms and Settlers Ridge. We implemented a new tree program, 50-50, so the residents can get new trees. They pay half, and the village would pay half. We implemented new plans to finance much-needed street repairs within the village. We also negotiated a new refuse contract, which is saving all of the residents money. We invited a new internet provider to come into town to give Mediacom a run for their money. So we've done a lot, and there's a lot more to do. So I'm pledging, and I'm committed to making sure that we're going to continue with smart and reasonable growth, make sure that any developers are adhering to our ordinances regarding green space, berms, landscaping, and beautiful buildings. And we're going to do our best to make sure that we are doing everything we can to make the village of Sugar Grove the best place to live in Kane County. So early voting has started, and I ask for your support.
Thank you. Ms. Conan.
Hi, my name is Jennifer Conan. I've lived in Illinois for the past 16 years, and Sugar Grove is the only place I've lived. My husband and I chose to live in Sugar Grove for the close proximity to his family, while providing the small town feel that I was familiar with. we have entertained the ideas of moving out of state due to the increase in property taxes, as well as the state income tax. I know we share this thought with many residents. The idea of leaving this peaceful place where we have established roots and raising our children. I'm the most emotional person. I just like to take a time out for that.
So it's fine.
I'm sorry. We have chosen, the long and short is we decided to stay. We have a hard time leaving a community that we're vested in. Oh my God. I promise that the jitters will wear off. I decided to run for village trustee due to the recent proposal by Crown Development. As I was searching for information, I contacted village officials for clarification on this project. I wanted them to explain to me what I might have been missing. Through my research, I was never given any answers to justify this massive project. Just more questions and more doubts. That's when I knew we needed change in Sugar Grove. I believe in transparency and accountability. Doing the minimum that is required to communicate isn't enough. Crown has been working with the village for the past 15 years, according to Brent Michaelberger. The village rejected their concept plan, Glenwood, at Sugar Grove. This plan had homes, parks, commercial, around the exchange. Sounds nice in comparison to the recent plan. I believe in thoughtful and controlled development, projects that add to our town and increase our property values. Sugar Grove is a community worth protecting. The decisions that are coming before our village board will forever change the face of our community and our way of life. I'm sorry. Let's look for a long-term effect. Let's look at the long-term effect of any development before we make our decisions. I believe there's also a disconnect with the village and their residents. It is time to have an advisory group made up of residents that represent different subdivisions, as well as representatives for local businesses that communicate with the village. I believe the current administration is doing what they think is best, but not what the community is looking for as a whole. Please vote for change in Sugar Grove. We need a fresh perspective.
Thank you. Mr. Walter.
Thank you. My name is Ryan Walter, and thank you to the League of Women Voters for including all of us, and especially the writing candidates, and thank you to all for coming out. Sometimes it takes a crisis or a threat of losing something you love to wake up a person, or in this case, a community. I am encouraged by our residents' interest in this election and future community affairs. The next few years are going to be critical in shaping the future of Sugar Grove while maintaining what makes us unique and a desirable place to live. With only a couple days to prepare, I invested over 16 hours of performing due diligence, analysis, and preparation in order to testify at the Crown's second public hearing. It is with this same amount of commitment and dedication that I look forward to representing the best interest of our residents and maintaining or enhancing our residents' quality of life and the sense of community. We all have personal preferences and interests, yet we all need to be flexible and open to compromise when reasonable developments or ideas are proposed. Personally, I have over 20 years of professional experience, the past 5 years as Vice President and Regional Controller for the Quick Creek Companies, 7 years as a Senior Manager of Financial Planning and Analysis, and 8 years as a CPA and auditor. I'm a trained and experienced professional at conducting independent critical assessments and not being persuaded to believe something without supporting facts and evidence due to my skeptical mindset. I believe my overall business experience and critical thinking skills will bring significant value to the village's decision-making processes. I not only want to be informed by all residents, I not only want to be informed by all relevant facts, opportunities, and risks before I make a decision, but also I want all the other decision makers and stakeholders to be just as well informed. I'm able to be successful in this way because of the ability to work and communicate well with others, and due to my passion for truth, accuracy, and transparency. Lastly, people who know me, my wife is here, will attest to my consistent character of being a servant leader, an encourager, honest, trustworthy, patient and humble, a good listener, and a person that genuinely cares about the well-being of others. So Lord willing, I look forward to the opportunity of serving this community for the next 4 years.
Thank you. We'll start with question number 1 with Mr. Klein-Wedin. If elected, how will you balance what is best for the entire village versus what is in the best interest of 1 or 2 neighborhoods?
Balancing what is best for the entire
You have
village.
1 minute.
Thank you. Balancing what is best for the entire village is really simple. It's having an understanding of what the village needs. And what balancing that is financially as well as what the residents want and the residents need. This is not about one individual development. This is not about one individual community. It's the community as a whole. And I think that by doing a better job from the board's perspective of understanding what the entire village wants and balancing what's best financially, fiscally, being responsible, whatever that determination is what it's going to come to.
Thank you. Ms. Lundy.
Thank you. Balancing what's best for the entire neighborhood versus a few, or for the full village versus a few neighborhoods. I think listening to what everyone has to say, doing a lot of research. I'm a research geek. I do a lot of research, and I like to find out what the facts are independent of what people are telling me, either the people from the neighborhoods because they have a biased opinion, or a development because they have a biased opinion. I like to do my own research, and then I can find out. Then I also like to find out what the neighborhoods that might be directly affected have to say, because I think they have a huge impact on property values. And I think it just has to be, is it a good development or a good thing for our village? Does it make sense in the future as well? And you have to listen to the neighbors, because if they absolutely hate it and it's maybe okay for the village, then it's not going to make our village happy. We're going to have a dividing line.
Thank you. Mr. Fowler.
Thank you. Yes, we do need that balance. That's absolutely critical. So we have to let the public have their say in what happens in the village. Just so you know, Chelsea Meadows, Windsor West, Hannaford Farms, Settlers Ridge, all were opposed by the residents of Sugar Grove at that time. So the village made the right decision and approved those subdivisions. Jewel met massive opposition, but the board still approved that project going in. So sometimes you do have to make that hard decision, what's best for the community, while taking other input into consideration, but don't let that be your driving force. It is important to hear what the residents have to say, without a doubt, but we also have to look at the big picture. I don't think anyone's complaining that Jewel's here. I don't think anyone's complaining McDonald's is here, or Ace, or Walgreens, or Culver's, or Dunkin' Donuts. Sometimes you have to make that hard decision. They made other projects like the water park, Menards. They all left because of community outrage. Those decisions never got to the board. So we have to just have that careful balance into taking all things into consideration, but looking at the bigger picture.
Thank you. Ms. Conan.
I think the balance for the full village and not just a select few is vital. I did hear it once that there was a trustee that had mentioned that they have to look at the full village before making a decision, which is accurate. Everything you spoke of is projects that benefit the residents. The project that has brought me to this table certainly didn't see the benefit there, but I know that there's many that disagree with me. Many maybe within the village that disagree with me, but that's what brought me to this table, because I'm for development, I want the community involved, and I want projects that benefit us, the residents that live here, the taxpayers that are here, and I don't like presentations put in front of me that have false information on them. So I'm here as a resident, speaking on behalf of all residents. If a project came to the south side of town and they were opposed to it because it wasn't a benefit to the community, I would be there supporting them. That's what we do as a community.
Thank you. Mr. Walter.
Thank you. First of all, residents' voice is number one in my opinion, okay? Do I have personal interests? Sure, but I'm not wanting to serve in this role for any power or for my best interest. It is for the community's best interest. I don't gain anything other than building great relationships and being in this role. That's what I'm about, is relationships. I'm not trying to get anything out of this. The comment said 2 neighborhoods, and I think I know where that's going at. This was a community as a whole that came out of hundreds of people and thousands that signed the petition. So this was all neighborhoods. This was all widespread of residents. So the community came out and gave their opinion. And also benefits the whole community. I can tell you with all honesty, I didn't talk to one resident, whether it be neighbor or people south of Mallard Point. I didn't hear one benefit, and that was after also asking Crown Development, Dan Olson, what are the benefits for us? They didn't have any. We're still shaking our heads wondering what is going on because we weren't going to get any tax. We'll talk more about taxes here in a little bit, but there was nothing in it for us. It was very going to be detrimental to communities and Sugar Grove as a whole.
Thank you. Ms. Johnson?
I think in going forward with any project, it's important to look for the balance, as everybody has already said. You have to review all the information, and you have to have all that information before you can make a decision. So that's why we have the processes in place to gather the community input and to sort through that and to use that information to apply it to a project and to negotiate what items are good and what items are not, and to work that into the process and the plan. You know, everybody's referencing Crown. The village board never got to give their input. So to just assume that we would have all voted for a plan that was presented is false. And so I've always made it a point to listen to residents, and I've done so for 24 years. I have always been accessible. I'm always willing to compromise. Thank you.
Thank you. Question 2, starting with Ms. Lundy. What future do you envision for the downtown Sugar Grove area that is parallel to Route 47 and adjacent to the fireside? What
Yeah, can you
future
repeat that?
do you envision for the downtown Sugar Grove area that is parallel to Route 47 and adjacent to the fireside?
West
Do you-
Main Street.
on the side.
Restaurant.
Route 47.
Yeah, southwest.
What plan, do you have a future vision for it? What do you think should happen?
Oh, okay, at the southwest, southwest where the approach is to the airport.
Okay.
Where the approach is, okay,
That's what I think she's saying.
okay.
Well, it's Main
Apologize.
Street, it's right here. Main Street.
Yeah,
So
just
this
down
is the downtown.
Okay, let me read the question that was submitted before we fixed it up to make it a little more positive. What do you intend to do about the eyesore that is downtown Sugar Grove, parallel to Route 47 and adjacent to the fireside?
That did answer the
We
question.
thought we were being kind of nice about it.
But which,
The Fireside Restaurant.
the Fireside Restaurant, so I
Jen,
said Fireside, okay, so,
Apartments.
Here.
oh, the apartments, okay, the apartments.
Go ahead,
What, would I plan on doing that?
yeah.
I would make sure we are up to code on all of the things, and if anything is in violation, then it needs to be brought up to code. But you're talking about the apartments and such, right?
She didn't write the question.
She can't answer
Oh,
that.
I'm sorry, I'm assuming if
The
you're,
eyesore that's on 47 and next to the fireside.
right, if it's,
Okay.
yeah. If it's existing, the existing structures need to be brought up to code, need to be, make sure that they are in full compliance with code. There's not much else you can do if it's, with it. You can't say, paint it a different color or, tear it down if it's somebody's property and they're paying for it and it's not, and the taxes are up to date. All you can do is make sure the it's up to code. You could possibly pass some more codes, and regulations to make it, so it's not as much of an eyesore.
Mr. Pollack?
Yeah, if we're referring to those apartments, that is private property, so if a developer has a good idea and they want to pay the property owners whatever that property is worth to redevelop it and make it look pretty, I'm all for it, and I'm sure the property owner would be too. But to answer your question in a different direction, what are our plans for downtown Sugar Grove? We have talked about the area north of the Jewel Mall, north of Park, to turn that into like a 3rd Street of Geneva. So including a gazebo, some shops, a small hotel. So that has been on our radar for quite some time. And across from that, further on the 4730 interchange, there is a developer looking at putting in retail into that area. So if you're looking for new development that makes Sugar Grove look better, help diversify the tax base, that is being discussed, that is on our radar, and hopefully we can do it very soon. I think it would be a great improvement for the village to have that area by Jewel as our version of 3rd Street in Geneva.
Ms. Cohen?
As far as the apartment buildings go, it doesn't sound like there's much that can be done with the private property as long as everything is in compliance there. So unfortunately, I think that has to stay the way it is for now. Sean Michaels was gracious enough to show me a picture of the area in and around McDonald's, since you brought that up. It's a beautiful idea with an open space in the center and retail and restaurant around the outside. The idea that our successful Sugar Grove consists of a McDonald's, a Culver's, a Walgreens, a Jewel, and then you go to Elburn, and they have a Walgreens, a Jewel. That's not successful development. That's just mass producing all the way up 47. I'm interested in creating a quaint town that we live in and a place that we want to go and gather. That's the idea of Sugar Grove in my mind.
Mr. Walter?
Again, yes, like they said, it's privately owned property, so that is what that is. Obviously, we could put taxpayer dollars there, but that's not. I don't see people up for doing that. With the downtown area, I just want to say that we do want, Sugar Grove has wanted that for a long time, and I know it takes money to do that. That's one thing that we lack. We have great neighbors, we have great community, we have great schools, but we are made up of neighborhood communities. Unless you have children, you don't really cross-pollinate relationships as easily as people with children. But we definitely need that community space for people to come out and just enjoy time with each other and see people that they normally don't see. Right now it is at McDonald's and Culver's, but I know our residents desperately do want something to enhance our community.
Ms. Johnson?
First of all, since it is privately owned, as everyone said, we can't really make someone do anything unless there were code violations. However, we could also work with the property owner and ask if they had any future plans. And one of the things that I would like to see, if I had my way, is to make a mixed-use development with retail options below, apartments above. You could add in really nice walkways, landscaping, and bring a true sense of space and comfort there. And all of that would have to be done in conjunction with the landowner, because obviously the village can't fund these kind of projects. But we could also, like I said, get on his radar and see, are there plans for the future, and come up with a plan that could be implemented.
Mr. Klein-Wedin?
Just to quickly reiterate, everyone, it is private property, and I do very strongly believe in that. That being said, I do believe that there are options to work with any homeowner, any private business owner, any landowner to see what can be done to help in any way. There are opportunities, whether it's other developers, partnerships, that may be an option. And that is something that currently I am unaware of, but that is always an option in any community. Everything here goes back to understanding the voice of the community and what we want. The downtown will shift and it will grow. And we have this beautiful area on Route 47, and we have access to roads. You have access to go towards Chicago, to Naperville, and you have an ability to go out west. And as we continue to grow over the next 5 years, that will be where we can look at development opportunities to create a true culture and what is the true downtown Sugar Grove, whatever that does look like.
Thank you. Next question, starting with Mr. Pollack. Under what circumstances do you think it is necessary to use eminent domain to encourage development? Explain.
Thankfully, that's never come up. I'm not a big fan of big government interfering with development like that, so I don't think that eminent domain is necessary. I think eminent domain mainly qualifies if you're looking to put in a hospital, an airport, some critical infrastructure like a roadway, things along those lines. So I don't think that's the role of government to declare eminent domain in a village like Sugar Grove.
Thank you. Ms. Conan?
Interestingly enough, Crown Development needs some Hannaford Farm property to put Denny Road through. So they approached us and wanted to have a nice conversation about it and make us an offer to put that road through for a project that the community is opposed to. So I guess the village would have to come to Hannaford Farm and come after us if they want Denny Road to go through, and that would go through the process of eminent domain.
Mr. Walter?
I too don't believe in eminent domain. I would not want my personal property taken away from me, and I believe all of you too, if you've worked hard to attain what you have. I'm not aware of any other instances where this would really come up and take place with Sugar Grove, with how expansive our land property is, but it is something that I certainly would not support it at all on the surface.
Thank you. Ms. Johnson?
The village has not really had to utilize this process. We have had to negotiate with landowners to acquire rights of way for road widening, or we are in the process of a quiet zone on Gordon Road, and it will be necessary to acquire small acreage to put in the right of way for the quiet zone. So those things would have to go through the process, but most are done by negotiating with the landowner. So,
Mr. Klein, what do you mean?
I also personally don't believe that eminent domain would ever be the first, or hopefully ever need to be used in the village of Sugar Grove. That is a tool that can be used by a community, but hopefully there are always better alternatives to work with the property owner to come to a much better solution than getting to that point.
Ms. Lundy?
I think eminent domain, the only time I would really think that would need to be used if it was a safety issue, if the fire department required something and you couldn't negotiate with the property owner, that would be the only time I would think that would come into it, would be, a life safety issue. Otherwise, I think there's always an opportunity to negotiate if you need to widen a road or something with the property owner instead of just out and out doing eminent domain.
Thank you. Starting with Ms. Cronin. Do you have any ties, directly or indirectly, to engineering firms, construction companies, or their supply chains, corporations, elected officials, or political parties? Could these relationships pose a conflict of interest? And if so, how would you handle it? Long question. 2 minutes.
I don't need 2 minutes. I have no relationships. My husband's family is in insurance. It's not in the village. So if you have property or casualty or business insurance,
Give me a call.
you can do that. But I have no other, from the long list that you just presented, I have no affiliations with any of that.
Mr. Walter?
I do not also. I certainly have set up boundaries in my own life that I would never try to put the interest of someone else before our residents. I do work for the Quick Creek Companies, which is a building materials manufacturer. So we sell at the Home Depots, Lowe's, so we definitely have the residential side, and we also do have the contractor side. So building materials used to build buildings, I mean, we do manufacture a lot of different materials, but that's sold to contractors, and I have absolutely no ties to that. I mean, Quick Creek would have no say in that either. So I just want to put that out there, that I do work for Quick Creek Companies. Great company, love it. It is a great company, but again, no ties or nothing that would coerce me to make a different decision for the better interest of a developer or anything like that.
Ms. Johnson?
I have no ties to any of those.
Could you speak in the mic?
I have no ties to any of those whatsoever.
Mr. Klein-Wedin?
I have no ties to any of the above. I work at Rich Harvest Farms, which is one of the larger employers in the village of Sugar Grove, something that I'm extremely proud of, and something that I feel my employer and the Rich family is extremely important. One of the things is to the transparency and to building a great village around that. So no ties, and care about the community.
Ms. Lundy?
I have no ties. The only exception would be I am an architect. I'm a practicing architect. I work for a firm that does healthcare. If by some chance they were to bring or want to do something in Sugar Grove, I would recuse myself from any decision-making because it would not be proper, and I would not also present to the board if there was something that needed to be presented. But that has never come up. All the architecture firms that I've worked with and my own, I've never had anything to do with in Sugar Grove where I've had to present something.
Thank you, Mr. Pollak.
No ties at all to any engineering, construction, anything like that. For full disclosure, I do work for AT&T and do sell to government, but I do not have any ties to the Village of Sugar Grove, the Fire Department, Waubonsie, or Caneland, so I'm completely separated from any hint of impropriety. There have been a few occasions where the village board has discussed tower lease agreements with some of our competitors. So just to be fully transparent, I recused myself from those discussions, and those votes went on without me. So to answer your question, no and no.
Thank you. Mr. Walter, do you support undertaking a review of the village's comprehensive plan? What role should environment concerns play in an updated comprehensive plan?
Yes, I certainly do support taking a look at the comprehensive land use plan as a community as a whole, having people come out and voice their opinions and concerns. Because the way that I see it when I look at it, just by gauging, by estimation, the land use plan is about 55% residential and open space, and about 45% airport, business park, and other public and commercial use. So I don't know that our residents moved here to have that type of a proportion of business versus residential. So I definitely am open to that, and knowing where our communities are now, and looking, making sure that the community has their voices. And the last part of that question?
What role should
With the environment.
concerns play in?
Environment should be a huge concern. Many people at the last public hearing definitely spoke and gave evidence about their concerns on that, so I definitely think that the residents should have a voice on that.
Ms. Johnson?
I think that it would be prudent to go forward with a review of the land use plan. I don't believe it needs to be a full comprehensive land use plan as was done in 2005. There's not that additional amount of land to the south that goes within our planning area right now. I think to look at it as to review the northern part, which is under question, would be a more focused area. And I think to deal with the environmental aspect of things, to have experts that deal with the wetlands and the ecological aspect of things is definitely important. You see things change over time, so I think that that's an important thing to consider.
Thank you. Mr. Klein-Wedin?
Just to steal Ms. Johnson's word, I think it's always prudent to take a look at everything you do, whether that's planned personally, professionally. I think there's no reason to not continue to receive input from citizens, and as things that come up, to always pay attention to what may or may not be going on with it. As it stands currently, I do think that it should be continued to be reviewed, to look at in more depth, and I believe the environment is extremely important here in Sugar Grove. I believe that the citizens move here because of the lakes, because of the trees, because of the land, and we come here because it's beautiful, we come here because it's peaceful, and point blankly, we pay the tax dollars that we all do as residents of Sugar Grove because of that. So that's something that is just imperative and needs to be kept in mind at all times.
Thank you. Ms. Lundy?
Thank you. I think, given the Crown Properties and the opposition to that, it was clear that a lot of the citizens weren't aware of what was on the comprehensive land use plan. And because of that, I think we need to look at it again and get everybody's input, because clearly There was a lot of people that felt they didn't get their input put in when it was changed. And because of that, I think we do need to look at it. And we need to evaluate it. Again, and because times are changing, trends are changing, and that's where I think we really need to look at the environment and look at what's coming in the future, what are going to be the regulations in the future, what are the trends for environmentally friendly planning for suburbs and towns like ours, and we need to look to that, and it needs to play a very important role, I think, in our future land use plan.
Mr. Pollock.
I'm very much open to the idea of having more community input into the land use plan. The one we have in place right now isn't law, it's just an idea, it's just suggestions made by the firm that did this back in 2005. So I'm completely in support of having other options, looking to ways to develop this land. When it comes down to the environment, and as Marie said, this project never got to the board, but some of the things that we would have been adamant about was protecting the water sources there, protecting the trees. It never got to us. None of the people outside of Marie and I have been in discussions with the Illinois EPA. We had to wait for a year for the Mallard Point drainage issue to be resolved because there was a possibility of a rare lily being in the pond. So the EPA had to wait to see if this flower bloomed, and it didn't exist. So we are going to make sure that any environmental impact is not going to be detrimental to the community. We do want to keep the trees and the streams and the lakes protected. We don't want the runoff from rainwater impacting the streams and lakes in the area.
Thank you, Ms. Kona.
Absolutely in favor of going over the comprehensive plan. I think a lot of residents were upset that it was amended last year, and hence there was a little uproar when this project came to light, that it had been modified, and albeit our fault for being complacent and not scrolling the agendas and the minutes and abreast of every moment of what's going on. But what tells me in history of looking of the 15 years that they've been dealing with Crown development, the village knew what was going on and the residents didn't. And so that's why we need to be open and honest with our residents and get the residents involved in this plan. We have an active community that uses the bike paths on a regular basis. If you drive down Merrill Road, you see wildlife. I don't even know how you develop that land with the amount of standing water that's out there. The whole forest area, if you drive up 47, you will see it's underwater. So the idea that they're going to build out there with infrastructure that's probably going to cost this is Dan Olson, north of $90 million just to make the land usable. We definitely need to evaluate that property as well as
Thank you.
other areas.
Starting with Ms. Johnson. What role do you see TIF districts playing in Sugar Grove's future growth and development?
The utilization of TIF is an economic tool that was first presented to the village board back in 2000-2001. We were told that we were in a prime location and we had a lot of land, but the cost associated with the development of that land was far exceeding what the business expectations were. So in order to have a TIF, you have to go through a process to determine if you even qualify, and then there's a number of different ways to handle it. Some communities do all the improvements and then bond it out, and then the community is responsible. Sugar Grove has never proceeded under those guidelines. We would make a developer pay the money for any of the improvements that needed to be made and determine what percentage of those improvements would qualify for TIF benefits.
Thank you. Mr. Klein-Wedin.
Similar to eminent domain, a TIF district is a tool that the village board will be able to use for the right situation. And it goes back to paying attention to what is needed. With the area that we have getting developed off of 88 and 47, I have not seen all of the financials behind it, but it is very debatable in my mind as to how much needs to be put into that. That is an area that there's no question will be valuable, will continue to be valuable, and the developer that does want to come in should pay the majority of that. That being said, the TIF is an amazing tool. for the right situation. And it's going to depend on situation to situation, what that looks like in the future.
Thank you. Ms. Lundy?
Thank you. I think TIF districts need to be thought of very skeptically. I think there is a good use for them in blighted areas, but you have to make sure that you are going to be getting more than what you would be losing from it. So you've got to make sure that you would not be putting a greater burden on the village by giving them a TIF district in an area that, say, they would have just tons and tons of kids coming to the school or something. Now we've got a huge load on our school district that we're not going to be getting the tax money for. So I think it needs to be very carefully evaluated and used with caution, but there is a use for it.
Mr. Pollock?
Thank you. Yeah, so in regards to what Heidi was saying, we would never TIF a residential district. That's just insanity, because we need that property tax dollars going into the schools and other resources. The TIF that was being proposed hasn't got off at ground zero. It never went to we never got the information from the consultants or the TIF lawyers on whether or not this would be a feasible TIF opportunity. If it did, let's just play devil's advocate for a second, if it did get the approval to meet the state guidelines of what's considered a TIF, one of the things that we would have done is over a period of time, we would have started demanding that the TIF funds go back to the supporting agencies like the schools, the fire department, and other resources. We had a developer that was looking at the 4730 area, and they wanted all the TIF money, and we absolutely rejected it. So we would be responsible with that TIF dollars. We would make sure that it did not have a financial impact on the community. I know there's a lot of misconceptions about what a TIF district is and what it means. So Kurt Karras, our township assessor, he's in the back there. Him and I are more than willing to talk to you after the meeting about TIFs and set the record straight.
Thank you. Ms. Conan?
Well, I think you can set the record straight, but TIFs are done and utilized the way the village and a developer agreed that it would be utilized. So TIFs come in all different shapes and sizes. They can be, they're very beneficial in downtown Aurora. We've seen great strides in downtown Aurora and those blighted areas that wouldn't otherwise be developed. That we're talking about this particular TIF district that Crown Development did say would not go forward without it. And in our school system, obviously, in our library, and our taxing body needs revenue. And for us to go into a project where we didn't know what it was. We still don't know what it was. No one was disclosing that. The conversations were being had with Crown Development over that TIF district. So they are beneficial at certain points, but not in this case.
Mr. Walter?
Thank you. First, according to our own website, tax increment financing is to assist stimulating investment in areas that have difficulty attracting development or jumpstarting economically sluggish parts of the community or areas in need, and provide incentives to attract business. I'm not really personally aware of anything in Sugar Grove that fits that criteria, especially bringing up TIFs because of what was 88 and 47. I know that their original proposal, from all I can see, they weren't requiring a TIF when they were trying to get the residential. I did a lot of research on TIF when I gave my public testimony at the public hearing. And I will tell you, not one business park from DeKalb through Naperville, I didn't go on beyond that, none of those are in TIF districts. The only TIF districts near us are really Aurora, and they've done a great job. That was a necessity. And we're all wanting diversified tax bases. We aren't going to get that with large, huge developments that are not paying their way in that. And also just wanted to say...
Thank you.
All right. I'll continue next time.
Starting with, we follow the rules. Starting with Mr. Klein-Wedin. Do you believe that using 100-year or 500-year flood calculation are realistic in evaluating development proposals? What role should the past 10 to 15 years of flooding and high rainfall be part of, or what role should the past 10 to 15 years of flooding and high rainfall be part of the evaluation process?
Well, I believe like anything, again, that's just a tool that the village and the engineers and the developers can utilize. Using a 500-year flood plan or a 100-year flood plan and continuing to look at what it looks like currently is always going to be important. I don't really have anything beyond that.
Thank you. Ms. Lundy?
Thank you. I think you have to start with the 100-year flood plan to look at, but I would defer to some of our engineers to ask their opinion, but I do know with the environmental climate that we have and some of the issues that we'll be seeing in the future with the climate and the environment and the potential for more flooding, I would like to get the opinion of the engineers and the experts, hey, do we need to reevaluate this? I'm not an expert there, so I don't want to make that claim, but I would do the research to find out who I need to talk to find out.
Thank you. Mr. Pollack?
Excellent question. Yeah, so absolutely, we have to rely on the experts to give their opinion on the best way to control these types of situations. 100-year floodplain, something like that has never come up to the best of my knowledge in any of our meetings, but it's a good thing to think about. But we have to rely on the experts and go on their advice and make sure that anything that is going to be developed, or whether it's commercial, residential, parkland, whatever the case may be, that it is safe for our environment as well as our community.
Thank you. Ms. Conan?
I agree with them about utilizing the engineers for that. We do have an area in Sugar Grove that many communities, Dugan Woods, Pressbury, and the flood of '96, not that long ago, while we've been in our current home for 12 years, and within that time frame, Hankus Road was covered by the golf course again because the golf course is in a floodplain. It's hard to imagine that we're going to develop property that is in and around Blackberry Creek when all of Blackberry Creek, as it floods downward in a big heavy rain, floods Blackberry Oaks Golf Course is underwater because of that river. So we do have a water problem to the north. I would ask the engineers to look at that, but it is something in this area that we have to consider.
Mr. Walter?
Again, I would leave this to the experts. However, I would say with any studies, as a CPA, we had to be independent of anything and everything, so that we were not like an Enron and Anderson. Because if you're not independent, you can make results and things the way that you want to propose them. So I would always strongly look for independent consultants and those experts, because people can pay for the study that they want to get the result that they want. So I fully support independence on any and all studies. I'm not saying that that's the case here at all, but that is something that we need to consider as we pay a lot of money, a lot of tax dollars. Just like the TIF study that was approved, and in that approval, it said that it was going to be paid by the expected new TIF study. So I looked at that firm. There wasn't much I could find out as far as independence. A lot of consultants aren't independent, but we need to consider that.
Thank you. Ms. Johnson?
I would also say we have to defer to the engineering experts to handle the whole flooding issue. And, yes, they would look at the 100-year time frame, but they also look at recent issues as well. And after the flood in 1996, Kane County did change the requirements for, storage and everything for water. So those things were all changed and updated to control future flooding.
Thank you. Starting with Ms. Lundy. Do you believe that the board needs to improve the transparency and equitable representation in gathering input from residents? How would you make these improvements?
I think the village is doing what it legally needs to do, but I think with the Crown properties, it seemed like the majority of the people that were at the meetings felt that they were blindsided and that the communication was poor. And that I have to agree with, because if you have that many people say we didn't know, then there was a failure on the village's part. Maybe not legally, but we should have looked some way of getting that information to them sooner and get their input. So I believe in full transparency, you have to look at what legally you can and cannot do. There are some strict rules, but I think we need to absolutely find a way, be it a better website or newsletters or something, so that we can get that information out to everybody in a quicker way and a more comprehensive way.
Thank you. Mr. Pollak?
Over the past 2 years, we have made strides in improving the communications with the village. We have a part-time person who's responsible for our social media. So she's on Facebook and putting things up on the village website. For the past 2 board meetings, I've been asking for equipment to have our meetings streamed now that we have a high-speed internet provider in town, so our residents can watch board meetings from their laptop or their computer or their iPad, whatever they're using. So I'm all in favor of full transparency. Can we be doing a better job? You can make that argument that we can, but what's the best way to reach out to all the people in the village? We can't send out 3,500 registered letters on everything that comes to the board saying, hey, here's what we're doing. But I'm open to ideas to help the communications, especially with the different subdivisions. If there's a project going on that impacts them, I'm more than happy to have that discussion and look for ways how we can make the message better and stronger for our community.
Thank you. Ms. Conan?
I mentioned it earlier in my opening that I feel like there's a need for an advisory group, that there should be a representative from every subdivision in Sugar Grove. I don't know what your problems are if you live in a different community than I do, but I know that when I was walking Dugan Woods and spoke to a resident, it was kind of eye-opening as to the problems that exist in that community. And Mallard Point has certainly been through their ring of problems, but it's nice when there's something going on in our village like this particular project, is the amount of people that came out in support in a fight against something that they didn't want in the village. I want to be a part of a group that is a positive group, right? So we're all for things that we want to wrap our hands around and get involved with that make us happy, that make us a great place to live. But again, it goes back to communication within the village and within those separate subdivisions, working together. That's the best way to get the information out.
Mr. Walter?
I certainly support transparency, and along with that goes communication. I'm a person that, just by who I am and what I do, I'm a person that over-communicates, not in an annoying way, but like I said in my opening, I want other people to be informed of what's going on, whether that's in business or personal life or whatever it may be. But I try to look, a lot of municipalities have communication strategies. I didn't find any of that on Sugar Grove's website. I definitely support a communication strategy, which can involve a lot of different things. I won't get into all those right now, so maybe they'll come up soon. But we need to put some thought into that, because yes, we were all surprised. With regards to timing, I know there are laws. We don't have to follow them to the T to, in my opinion, favor a developer, if you will. I mean, again, we know Crown has been working with the village for years, and we had literally 2 days to try to look for, just grab for any information or facts or evidence we could in order to put together testimonies on that, and that just wasn't a good feeling for anyone in our village.
Thank you. Ms. Johnson?
First of all, there's a difference between transparency and communication. Transparency is the way government is run, and the Village of Sugar Grove is transparent. All our meetings are conducted in a public venue. All our information is put on the website. That's transparency. We don't hide anything. Communication is separate, and yes, could communication be better? Yes, it could. We've worked hard over the years to improve our website. As Dave mentioned, we hired a part-time person to work with our social media aspects. And in order to move forward with some of these other projects that will be coming to the village, we need to put into place a policy that can be equally applied to every project coming forward. We can't pick and choose which project we provide more public information about. It needs to be done in a fair and equitable manner in order to protect the village from a lawsuit that could then force something on us. So yes, communication can be better, and I'd like to see that happen and work with the attorney to come up with a policy to be applied equally and fairly.
Thank you. Mr. Klein, would you?
Going with what everyone said, I think it was extremely clear with the development that we were recently looking at that legally they did everything that was necessary. They put 2 postings in the beacon and they put 2 signs on